Now this video is really worth watching.
So what if I told you there's a political playbook out there, one that's thousands of years old but feels like it could have been written just yesterday? We're going to crack it open today. It's this timeless, almost secret strategy for gaining and keeping power. And you know what? Thinkers have been pointing it out for centuries.
And let's just jump right in with this quote. It's a zinger from one of America's founding fathers, Richard Henry Lee. Politics is the science of fraud. Wow! Now, he wasn't just being cynical, complaining about a few bad politicians here and there. No, he was pointing to something much deeper. He was warning us about the nature of the system itself, a system that has these predictable, repeatable patterns that just keep showing up over and over again, all throughout history.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to break down 3 main plays from this ancient playbook. First up is deception, then we've got fear, and finally, bribery. And stick around, because after that, we're going to look at the one big solution all these thinkers kept coming back to. All right, let's get into it.
All right, play number 1, deception. Think of this as the opening move. It's the entry point, right? This is how would-be rulers get their foot in the door. And it's not by using an army or brute force. No, it's way more subtle. It's by pretending to be the people's greatest champion. Another founding father, John Dickinson, he just totally nailed this. He pointed out that the really cunning leaders, they don't just grab for power. That's too obvious. Instead, they wrap their ambitions up in the language of law, of justice. They make it all sound perfectly legal and above board.
And if you want a perfect historical example of this, just look at ancient Rome. The historian Tacitus tells this incredible story about the Emperor Augustus. See, Augustus used something called the power of the tribuneship as his cover. Now, this was an office that was originally created to, get this, protect the people. But what did Augustus do? He took the name of that office, an office for their protection, and used it to secretly build his own monarchy. It's just the ultimate bait and switch. He was using the language of freedom to literally destroy it from the inside out.
Fast forward a few centuries, and you get a guy like Machiavelli, who basically takes this idea and writes the instruction manual. He's like, listen, a ruler doesn't actually have to be a good person, merciful, faithful, whatever. That's not the point. The point is, they have to seem to be. His advice was literally that a successful prince needs to be a great hypocrite and dissembler. He just said the quiet part out loud.
And this all circles back to a really powerful warning from another writer, John Trenchard. He said, look, the most dangerous threats to your freedom, they don't show up with chains and announce their evil plans. No. They show up waving flags. They show up preaching about freedom. They hide their real goals behind all this patriotic language, and they trick people into supporting the very thing that's going to take away their liberty.
Okay, so deception gets them in the door. But how do they stay in power? Well, that brings us to play number 2, fear. This is the big one. It's the ultimate tool for keeping people in line.
James Madison gave us what might be one of the most important warnings ever on this. He said, pretty much without fail, whenever a country loses its liberty, you can almost always trace it back to one thing, a panic over some kind of foreign danger. And it doesn't even matter if that danger is real or totally pretended.
And John Trenchard, that guy we mentioned earlier, he explained exactly how this works. He said leaders will drag their countries into these ridiculous, expensive, fantastical wars for one reason: to keep everyone in a constant state of panic and alarm. Think about it. When people are scared, when they're distracted, they're not asking tough questions about what their government is doing. They'll agree to pretty much anything that's sold to them in the name of defense.
There's this political writer, Jean-Louis Delhomme, who actually broke this down into a simple 3-step process. Step 1, create an emergency, or at least hype one up. Step 2, pass some temporary laws to deal with the crisis. And then the final move, step 3, those temporary measures somehow never go away. They become permanent weapons of state control.
So you've got deception to get in the door and fear to keep everyone in line. But there's a third play in the book, and this one's a lot more subtle. It's bribery. And it's not about cash in an envelope. It's about making people so comfortable, so dependent that they just forget what real freedom even feels like.
In this tactic, it's been around forever, just in different forms. The ancient Romans famously called it bread and circuses. Sound familiar? Maybe today it looks more like grain distributions, social safety nets, stimulus checks, or just huge public spectacles. The packaging changes, but the strategy is exactly the same. Keep the population happy and distracted with material benefits.
Let's circle back to Augustus for a second, because he was the absolute master of this.
Tacitus tells us he completely won over the people with cheap food and nonstop entertainment. And the result? It was honestly devastating. The Roman people, the people who had once built this incredible republic and conquered the known world, they became so complacent that, in Tacitus's words, if they had but bread and shoes, their ambition went no higher. That's it. They just gave up. They willingly traded their liberty for a full belly and a good show.
The philosopher Montesquieu called this the final stage, the terminal stage of corruption. And this is where it gets really dark. It's the point where the people themselves become part of the problem. They start demanding their piece of the pie, a cut of the public money. Pretty soon, the only thing that can satisfy their demands is the public treasury itself. And at that point, everything is for sale, even their votes.
And get this, Benjamin Franklin saw exactly how this becomes a vicious cycle. The more a government oppresses people with things like high taxes, the more discontented they get. So what does the government have to do? It needs even more money to bribe its supporters and keep the population quiet. And where does that money come from? More taxes, more plunder. It's a downward spiral, a self-feeding loop of control that just gets worse and worse.
Okay, so let's recap the playbook. Deception, fear, and bribery. I know, it's a pretty bleak picture, right? So the big question is there a way out? Is there a solution? Well, according to all these thinkers, there is. But it's not as simple as just voting for new people or changing the players on the field.
Yeah, all these historical thinkers were really clear on this one point. The only real answer isn't to find a better leader to run the exact same corrupt playbook. That's pointless. The only true cure, as one writer named St. George Tucker put it, is to go back to the system's original principles.
And Montesquieu, he gives us this final, really sobering warning. He basically says that once a republic is truly corrupted, you can't just put a Band-Aid on it. You can't just patch it up. Any attempt to fix it on the surface is either going to be useless or worse, it's going to create a whole new problem. The only real solution is to get at the root of it and remove the corruption itself.
So that brings us to the big takeaway here. After looking at this playbook, a playbook that's literally centuries, even millennia old, you really have to stop and ask yourself a tough question. Are the problems we see in politics today just an accident? Is the system broken? Or is it possible that it's not broken at all? That it's actually working with incredible precision, exactly according to these ancient rules?
And that's really the question I want to leave you with. Is the system broken, or is the ancient playbook working perfectly?